Hi, everybody. I appreciate you coming out on a warm day, but then it is July. You can't say, well, boy, it's really hot out. Well, it's July. Tomorrow it'll be warmer, and it's still July. So, yeah, appreciate coming out, and we're going to have, I think, a good conversation. I invited Galen out. I haven't really talked to him for a while about plants, and I've known Galen, God, for time eternal almost.
Yeah. Good or bad.
Yeah, right. For quite a long time, through the 80s.
Yeah, that's right.
Can you speak up?
Yep, I can. And I can get closer to you too. We can be more intimate. I've known Galen since the early 80s, and I have to say we have a plant-driven relationship. He was at the Chicago Botanic Garden, and I was at the Natural Garden, and I was continually learning and understanding plants and their ability to understand, and actually not understand, but patiently wait for humans to understand them. And Galen helped me with a lot of information, took me around, showed me a lot, and then we meandered around looking at different gardens together. And it's just a good friendship, a really good friendship. And I'm glad he's here today to share his experiences all over the world with plants, seed collecting in various countries, seeing a lot of our perennials in their native habitat in different parts of the world and how they've lived and who they lived with. So he really understands plant relationships well. So I just want to turn it over to Galen, and every now and then I'll chime in if something eventful that's happened at Northwind in that relationship of how plants have grown together in social systems. So Galen, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, everybody. One of the things that I thought might be of value is just a couple of comments on color. You have a black and white color wheel, sorry to say. I have one color piece that I'll send around if that's helpful. As you'll see, primary colors are blue, red, and yellow. And then, of course, you'll get secondary and tertiary colors in between the two primary colors. And as we walk around, you'll see interesting combinations of plants, and I would suggest that you look at color. There's a lot of things that we should incorporate when we garden, certainly. One, of course, fragrance. Another, sound, whether it's the rustle of Northwind panicum or anything else, those two elements, but certainly color, and that's what we see first and foremost and take in. A lot of people like to use contrasting primary colors, and some like to use more complementary or analogous colors together for different reasons. How many have been to the Chicago Botanic Garden? Well, you may have noticed on the English walled garden how on the west border, and I haven't been there the last 2 years, but I think this is probably still true. John Brooks designed that so that you had cool colors on the far outside corners, and then as you move towards the main gate, they were hotter. So oranges and reds, with the idea that from a distance as you approached that structure and garden, it subliminally took you to the main entrance. And I was struck by that as I walked around today. One example is right here, where the red leaf barberries have set and been very clear, okay, here is the entrance to the garden beyond. And you'll notice the limestone pavers in there. If you've been out on Evening Island, you'll notice that as you walk down that path, there are flat limestone bits right at the point you turn into and go up on the mound on the east side. So color here, prominent, very straightforward. More subliminal can be just limestone and limestone set in a gravel path. So you almost have to look for it. And that's kind of, I think, one of the fun things in a garden is to have bits and pieces that people may or may not notice. I just hung a, and it's not tacky, I swear, but I just hung a purple glass ball in our witch hazel, and my wife said, well, sitting on the deck, I can't see that. Well, you're not supposed to see that. You are supposed to experience the garden, look for various things. A friend, Gary Kohler, a friend of mine at Harvard, one time said, you should walk through a garden as most intended, slowly, and then you should turn around and then walk back the way you came, and you're going to see more than what you saw initially. So we'll point out a couple of those things that can indicate movement. You'll also see in a garden, well, a peekaboo plant or see-through plant. So in this case, this, and I don't know which one this is, but some of these can be 8 feet tall. And so you can create a scrim, if you will, in a garden that psychologically creates a line of division or creates a certain space. And you'll see large shrubs and hedges. If you walk actually on Spider Island, which is west of the main island, you'll see that you take the path and you go all the way around, and then you have no clue what's ahead of you other than what you can see directly ahead of you, because here's water, but this has been screened. There's a hill here, this has been screened. As you work around, you're looking south across the lakes, all the way basically to the end of the garden, and then you follow the path and turn again, and it's a dead end. But there are benches there, you sit and you take that view in. So if you, and the reason that is done is, one, as an element of surprise. If you think of going through an art gallery, if you turn into a new room and you can see the end of the room, chances are fairly good you're not going to go all the way to the end of that room. And that was the concept of Spider Island, was this forced you to see everything. Does that make sense? Good. And then back to color. It's the rods in our eyes is what allows us to pick up light, low-level light. We can see pretty well. It's the cone that really provides the color. So if you're using color in the garden, well, another example, the rose garden at CBG. If you stand at the west portico and look, there's 5,000 roses. If you look out across those roses, what you're going to see are the darker, warmer colors closest to you, and then you'll see yellows and whites further out. The reason for that is your eye can take all that in. If you flip that and you have the warm colors in the distance and the cool colors closer to you, you lose the dark reds in the distance. So that's just the use of color, but particularly on a larger scale. And then moon gardens are popular right now. So then using plants with white flowers, silver foliage, that type of thing can lighten up an area at night so that it just, you feel a part of the garden by being able to see the garden, and that helps carry that into the evening. Anything? What do you want to add to that?
I'm just listening and learning. So I think I'll stand up here. I'm an old guy, but I don't need to be an old guy as far as sitting down and relaxing, because my whole goal of getting older is keep moving. Keep moving, keep eating. Anyway, it's a side note. And there's no pause button. You know, you just, there's no pause. I'm going to stay at this age for about 5 or 6 years. If I had one wish, I wish that between when I was 20 and 30, I had 20 years of life to live. Because then by the time I got to 30, I would have known a lot of things that I could have really been doing when I was 30, 31 years old, that it took me into my 50s to finally figure out. Another side note, But I think things Galen is saying it's all called perspective. And the other thing, it's not rushing yourself to have a garden. If you want something immediately, you go to Burger King. That's where you get immediate food, immediate service, immediate. If you want something to love, to nurture, to care for, you have a garden. Because it's the trip that's the excitement. It's not the getting there. So it's the garden. And the most fun I have, I have to say, is gardening. People say, "Oh, Roy, you're working." When you're gardening, you're a social worker. You're learning about every plant. You're coming to know every plant as a living being, socially, how they move and live in the earth, who they live with, how they share resources, and you're patiently understanding how they're going to mingle together in a social community. And you're really going to learn if you place them together poorly. If you didn't understand and know who these plants are and put them together based on color and bloom time, you're never going to be a gardener. You're going to be a laborer. And you're going to always be laboring to keep the plants you never came to know from overtaking and interacting and becoming what you would call messy. Some guy asked me the other day, he goes, "Roy, can you come over? My garden got away from me." Well, I went over there and I looked around, I go, "You know what, Jim? You got away from your garden. The garden didn't just decide to do what it wanted to do. You got away from the garden. And that's why it looks like it did." And then one other person was telling me, "Can you come over? My echinacea is seeded everywhere." And I said, "Why'd you let them do that?" All you do is get the hoe and you hoe them out. Like it's a dandelion, it's a chickweed coming up. If you see little echinaceas, just hoe them out if you don't want them there. But people just let them take over. And then they blame the plant for being aggressive. The plants just are who they are. There's not one plant on earth that cares about you, cares how much money you have, how you kiss your children. Nothing. They don't care about you. All they do is they know how to live and become who they are. And all they want is that opportunity. And I think what Galen's sharing with you is how, when you know who they are, how you position them so you can be Monet. You can have your Monet moment in the garden and be the artist in the garden. So I think everything Galen is sharing and sharing into the future is that positioning of plants once you come to know them, how you can create something beautiful for yourself and your family.
And as to Roy's point, the Burger King analogy, and we all know how long that lasts, you should view gardening as the journey. If you think of the cultural aspects in life where it is reading, whether it's sculpture, whether it's oils, whatever it may be, gardening is the most challenging, and you should have that perspective of, I'm here to make this garden what it is, and keep that in mind. A garden is never, ever done. Which is one reason why I'm such a photographer, is I just want to capture what I can so that I have it, because it's not going to last. We're dealing with the vagaries of weather, temperatures that will drop, soils that are heavy because of heavy rainstorms and insects, pests, whatever. But realize it's going to take some time to do that. And Roy's point about taking your time, it's a good idea, I think, to, if you can, live with a landscape for a year and try and visualize what it is you want to do. And there's some tricks to that. I saw a nice one of your annuals in there. By using certain plants, you can create, if you think you want a hedge here, grow an annual that's inexpensive, that's 3 feet tall, and put that in and say, do you like that? Does that fit with what it is that you want to do? Very simply, if I want to add a small tree or a shrub somewhere in the garden, I'll just go out and take a round point spade, put it in the ground, go back to my major viewpoint, and just, does that look right there? That kind of thing. Nothing drastic or incredible. Roy does that part of the lecture. Go for it.
So I think the best part is we get up and take a walk, and we'll walk through the garden, and Galen can kind of share what he sees, and I'll maybe share where some of these plants are from. You know, like some of the perennials, what part of the world they're from, and how they've lived and where they're native to, because that's always a good experience. Like I'm 100% Bohemian, and people think you're an artist. No, it has nothing to do with art. It's actually Bohemia, which is a county in the Czech. It's a Bohemia. It's a county, and the county is nothing. We're peasants. We trace our family back, peasant. About 1840, we're peasants. That's our history on Earth, is peasant. So, but that's okay. You know, you got to come from somewhere. So I think when you understand where these plants are from and how they've lived in different cultures, the key is that they understand the temperate zone well. And then they understand, they have a forgiving nature in our soils, because we have heavy clay soils. And we have wet winters, and no matter if it's raining or snowing in the winter, the soils stay wet. And that's when you look at like some of the misconceptions about climate change. One is that we want to move zone 6 plants into this climate. Well, now, why would you do that? They can't live in our heavy clay soils. If you're taking them from soils, zone 6, we're in central Illinois, southern Illinois, Nashville, wherever it is, you just don't look at temperature's not the one thing. It's like all of you need about 2,200 calories to be healthy, right? Roughly, per day. What if that all came from Dunkin' Donuts with sprinkles?
Okay.
That's all you ate. You ate about 6 to 7 Dunkin' Donuts with sprinkles. You get your 2,200 calories. How long are you going to be healthy? Maybe 2.5 months, 3 months, then you're 911. So it's not just the calories that keep you healthy. It's the food you're eating and the exercise, all these things contributing to it. So when you look at climate change, it's not just temperature, weather, and rain. They all play a role, but you have to look at the existing soils and how fast are these soils going to change. They're not going to change as quickly as the rainfall amounts which are going to occur, like the tornadoes we had on Lake Geneva, those could happen again next week. That's the part of climate change, is unpredictable weather, which will be predictable because that's the weather we're going to live into. We're living into this. We're not having tornado seasons anymore. There's no more tornado season. We had a tornado last year in December. That's our future as far as weather. But the soils aren't going to change that dramatically that quickly. And if they do change, we'd like them to change for the better, not the worse. Because soils are, all this soil you see here, this is all industrial soil. This was once a farm. This isn't healthy soil. Jerry Wilhelm calls it aboriginal soil. We don't have aboriginal soil anymore. Very little. Our remnants, our remnant prairies, our remnant woodlands, our remnant savannas, that's remnant soil, or aboriginal soil. This was a farm field. This was plowed, about 18, 20 inches down is a plow pan. Water can't infiltrate that as readily as it used to. The organic matter in all our farm fields is declining and disappearing. Corn takes more than it gives. Native grasses gave more than it took. The native grasses built all these fields, this organic matter. The corn is basically living because of chemicals. And as the organic matter continues to decline, the corn will weaken and decline and disappear. So it's cool. What's our future? It's grain crops. We'll be a nation of grains instead of a nation of corn. That's in about 100 years or so. And that's how life works, I guess. I don't know. But grains have deep penetrating roots. They'll add organic matter to the soil. The soil will strengthen and get modestly healthy again. And then we have a cycle of here's what we learned from what we didn't know. Here's what we came to know, and here's what we learned that we can make something better and healthier. And it starts now. It's not, well, let the next group do it. It starts now.
And there's a couple of things that Roy's mentioned. If you pass a farm field today and it is plowed completely free of any vegetation, any residue from the previous crop, that soil is being destroyed. And to create a foot of soil, it takes 1,000 years of natural processes to create 1 foot of soil. The best thing, and this has been knowledge for over 30 years, the best thing you can do in farming is minimal or zero tilling. It acts as a mulch. The residue that's left, you drill down through that plant, and you're not destroying the structure of the soil. When you see, we just passed this coming up, sign that said black dirt. Well, rough black dirt is dirt, that soil that has just been taken out of the ground. What so many people do is run that through a machine that pulverizes it, and that destroys the soil structure that has taken 1,000 to 2,000 years to develop. So if you ever have a choice, buy rough black soil, don't buy pulverized soil, for a number of reasons. One, structure's been destroyed. If you try and plant grass seed, the grass seed floats to the top. You know, if you use rough black soil, you can just rake that, and the seed is just beneath that soil. What else was I? There was something else I was going to say. And today, and this is sacrilege, you may all fall out of your chairs, but there is so much information, misinformation out there, that native plants native to this area use less water and use less fertilizer than plants from other parts of the world. I have never heard such BS in my life. I've spent 30 years traveling the Northern Hemisphere, looking at communities. The soil, you know, we're the breadbasket of America, right? Through the Midwest here. You go same latitude into Russia, in the steppe meadows, that soil is just as deep, just as rich, just as good as anything else. So, sorry if that, I said it the other day to people, and, oh my God, they almost got attacked. But it's true. It is just a bunch of bunk.
Could you speak to pH? I know where I live, I tend to have a really high pH, and everybody talks about amend your pH. What are you guys thinking?
Your pH around here is always 7 because of the limestone below the earth. So roughly, if you go into some of the ravines in Highland Park, you might have a pH of 6.5. But everywhere you go, it's kind of 7. So usually, like every place we plant, we don't do any amendment. We don't put any, we do nothing. And we just pick out plants that fit the conditions we're asking the plants to live in. So instead of trying to amend it to make it something you can't do rapidly, you can't change the soil rapidly, that'd be very difficult to do. You just say, here's the conditions I have, you know, here's the plants that will fit those conditions. And then the beauty of your garden isn't the plants you have. The beauty of your garden is all composition. If you pound a piano, you're playing notes, aren't you? Just bam, 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 bam. Those are all keys, and each key represents a note. But how many are you going to sit through an hour of somebody just pounding a piano? And at the end, that was wonderful. None of you'd be screaming, leaving the room. Stop that, I can't take that. So when you hear music, what makes it beautiful? It's the composition. It's the way notes are placed on paper. So your garden isn't going to be beautiful because you've bought the newest plant, which the industry wants you to do. Here's what's new, here's what's new. Oh my God, I got to have that because it's new. Why? Learn to use old plants in new ways. New might be better in some way. Well, then take it home and check it out. Put it in your vegetable garden, grow it, see how it fits your personality. See how it fits your nature of gardening. I'm starting a new book, and I'm very excited about it. It's going to take me a while. It's called Gardening and Wild Love. And the first few chapters have nothing to do with plants. They have to do with who you are as a human being. How do you find love in your life? How do you find living in nature? How do you associate with other living things beside yourself? So when you have a self-assessment of who you are, that self-assessment will let you pick out the plants that understand who you are at the time you answered that self-assessment. And then as you learn to love, understand, and become more part of a natural world, your love and understanding of other plants will rise. So it's a growth rate together. Here's who I am, here's who I know I've come to be in the life I have, and here's the plants that will understand who I am and live with what knowledge I have about who I am. And it takes you beyond the magazine pictures and becoming romantic about what you can never have. You can look at every romantic magazine picture, good housekeeping, bad housekeeping, simple housekeeping, whatever it is, the pictures in there you don't have the time to take care of. And you don't have the knowledge to do it. And everybody says, well, I know how to garden. All of you know how to garden. There's no question about it. But I'll be the first to admit myself, I'm not any good at what I do. I'm better than I used to be last year, and next year I'll be better than I am right now. But I'm still the constant intern. I'm not going to tell anybody I'm an expert on anything. If I say that, I'm just lying to you. I'm an intern learning and understanding more about who plants are and how they relate to the soils and how they relate to each other in a social way of living. So the more you come to know plants independently as a friend, when you befriend them, then you can create a community of friends and see how they share resources and live well together tightly, so you can suppress weeds. And that's the excitement about our future. It's a plant-driven future. It's not a product-driven future. If you want to buy products, God bless you. Go buy all the Miracle Grow you want and hope to God that makes your garden better. Get a truckload of Milorganite and spread it everywhere. It's not going to do anything. All you got to do is know the plants, know the soil, understand rainfall. How does it rain? When does it rain? And become connected to something beautiful within nature. And then feel how healthy you will feel. Wow. And then how powerful you're becoming because you have relationships. And that's why, again, having Galen here sharing intimacy from all those years, this is wisdom coming at you. This isn't just a talk. So I'm really happy you're here to help us out expressing what we do.
To your comment about chlorosis in your plants, a couple that one, you should do a soil test, and you should go, and not just out of one spot of the garden, but you want a steel shovel. You don't want to taint the soil sample, and then take it from like 5 different areas, and then shake it up and send it off. A couple of plants that are potentially a problem, if it's really high, 7.8 to 8, even amylancers can be chlorotic. Witch hazels can be chlorotic. And those two would take anywhere from 6 to 9 years at the Botanic Garden before they showed. Once a high percentage of that root system was in soil and it was dominant, then that is reflected in above ground. White pines I would stay away from. 2 reasons. One, if you think of where they grow in Wisconsin, sharp drainage, acid soils, we're the opposite of that. And there may be a couple trees and shrubs as we walk through looking at things. And I won't be specific, but some national magazines that show gardens add to those gardens before they're photographed. That's all I'll say.
We just did that today. There's a garden walk tomorrow in Fontana. I hope you all invited. It's our first Fontana garden walk. Well, we're at one of the houses, and I put Phlox True Blue. We just popped it in for color. It's like a photo shoot. So tomorrow's a photo, but I think they'll live well with where they're at because they're a shorter phlox. But that was what we did all day yesterday, was enhance the garden and be entertaining to people on Sunday. And that's what people are on the walk are looking for. They're looking for entertainment. How many tap dancers did you put in the garden today? How many singers do you have so I can get my entertainment, so I get my $20 worth for the ticket? And that's cool. I think that's a big part of it. You want to be entertained. You want plants to have a special place in your heart for you. So that's part of gardening is, you know, strike up the band if you need to. There's nothing wrong with that.
Another point related to trees, there's a reasonably new naturally occurring hybrid, and I'll show you the other parent as we go through, but it's called Freeman maple. So you have red maples that like low wet areas, particularly acidic, and then you have silver maples that also are floodplain species, but better adapted to high pH. And what's happened in nature through time is that they've hybridized, and so stay away from selections that are red maple and focus more. Don't buy silver maple either, they're structurally very weak. But the Freeman maple is a good maple and will give you fall color. You get fall color out of the red, and you get adaptability out of the silver, and you won't have chlorosis in that instance. Yeah, and also another thing is, if you I don't know if there are contractors here, but if you're putting in walkways and such, you don't want a limestone base if you are concerned about any sort of chlorosis that may show up. You want to use CA6 or CA9. Yes?
What is chlorosis?
Gee, that's a simple question. Chlorosis is when a leaf will turn yellow because of, principally, it's not entirely, but largely because of high pH soil. Technically 6.8 is neutral, and it varies. Northwest areas of Chicagoland are roughly 7.8. They're very high. Yeah, perfect. Yeah. So, and it's called interveinal chlorosis. You want to hand that back? And so what can help with that is the addition of elemental sulfur, not just elemental sulfur. And if you're planting, make sure you incorporate that into something like a rhododendron or an azalea. Does anybody grow rhododendrons or azalea? A couple? Okay. I've seen a lot of failures with that, and what works, hands down, has worked at the garden for 30 plus years. 50% medium pine bark, and this is bad, 50% peat moss, which is kind of non-renewable, but there's a new product out of coconut fiber called coir, C-O-I-R, and that's being bundled like peat moss, and we've just done it at home in our vegetable garden, which can act like peat moss. So 50% medium pine bark, 50% coir, or peat moss if you have it, no parent soil material at all. And then you plant your rhododendron in that, or your azalea. You have to water it heavily the first year because there isn't a lot for those roots to penetrate into. So heavy watering the first year, making sure you're not drowning it, right? And you'll have to beat it back. I mean, it's remarkable. If you're going into a bed with soil, you can use anywhere from 6, this is going to freak you out, 4 to 6 pounds of elemental sulfur per 100 square feet. Most recommendations are per 1,000 square feet. You can almost turn the soil yellow, and you'll have a good reaction. Okay. You wanted to talk?
Question about that. Is there any concern doing that in like a wetland habitat or in more of a watery zone area with the elemental sulfur?
No. Mm-mm. You want to talk about some of these plants?
Here's some of the plants we'll see on the walk. We put them up here so you can see them up close. I won't tell you the names now. You can ask the names. But any plants we have on the benches today, this is marketing 101. They're 20% off. Okay? But I wanted to show this one specifically. This is looking really beautiful, right? It's very vertical. It's a Solidago rigida, but it's a selection called Golden Rocket. It stays a little shorter than rigida, which is much taller. But if you look at it, if you're a Monet right now, you look at the buds, how beautiful the buds are before they open with that golden and more yellow. And then they open with kind of a yellow gold color. But it gives you more vertical element. So when you're placing this in the garden, you can have this vertical element, and you can have things leaning into it. You could spread a geranium roseanne, might be able to peek through here, a geranium sanguineum, might be able to run through here. Or you could put the calamaris with it. This would be a little bit higher than the calamaris, so you'd have the gold and the blue together. So that's, again, the only reason I can tell you that is because I know the plants. If you don't know the plant, you probably wouldn't know that those two would work together. And if you read the sign, you got a good chance of understanding that at least when they get to a certain height, they'll work together. And they have equal growth rates too. So they'll grow into each other at an equal growth rate. One doesn't grow faster than the other and shade it out. So by having an equal growth rate, they're able to share light resources and not one inhibit the other from having a good life.
How
But
much sun does the yellow flower need?
this would be full sun. And it grows in rocks and gravel too. So if you have rocks and gravel and sandy soil, at the Morton Arboretum at the Schulenburg Prairie, the Solidago rigida is about this high. When I first saw it in 1979, and I thought, wow, is that cool? Like yarrow. It kind of looked like yarrow, bloomed in more late July, August, and it was about that high. I ran back to the natural garden, and we were growing them from seed. I started growing native plants in 1979 from seed. I got them from Windrift Prairie. That was in Oregon, Illinois. And we had everything in the ground. We didn't know what a pot was. That was a Campbell's soup can, to me was. And we put plants in Campbell's soup cans. We cut the bottom out. So I put this in the ground to dig it the following year. It got this big. And when I dug it out for 50 cents, I gave you a beer flat for one plant. And I went to Ray Schulenburg and I said, I gotta ask you, Ray, do I have a seed? Was there an issue with the seed from Windrift? He goes, what's wrong? I said, in the prairie here, Solidago rigida was like this. It was very short. I put it into the beds at Natural Garden. It was almost 4 feet high and fly. So what does he do? He just starts laughing. He goes, Roy, check the soil. Where is that growing in the prairie? So out there, it's growing in rocks and gravel at the Schulenburg Prairie. I'm using mushroom compost from Campbell's Soup. It was free. All I had to do was pick it up in West Chicago. So I was putting that into highly organic. I could have grown the biggest pumpkin in the world in our soil at the Natural Garden. So everything actually in the ground got big and floppy because we were giving it too much organic matter. And that's why that got so big. It was the conditions I put that plant in to grow. Too much organic matter. And it just this became this big. So those are considerations when you look at your soil. The possibility is you might be providing too much organic matter to your plants. So you have to think that out and see for yourself if your plants are loose and floppy, that you might have too much organic matter. Galen's right, you could do a soil test. It'll tell you the percentage of organic matter in your soil. And our mulch, we use leaf mulch when we mulch. If people don't let us mulch, we let all the plants live in their own stem fall and leaf fall. We just mow everything, trim everything, we let everything fall to the ground. And the plants couldn't be happier because their ancestors, since they appeared on off, all lived in their own stem and leaf fall. I tell this to a lot of people, there are no Native American tribes wood chipping the prairies. That never happened. They didn't have Native American blowers going through the kettle moraine, blowing the leaves and taking it to the Native American landfill. What we did, we somehow decided to create this system of gardening without really knowing who the plants were and how they lived. So as we created this system of gardening, we never questioned it. We just kept doing it. And then we created a belief that that's the way plants want to live. And so now, as a culture, we're reassessing that. We're looking at how do plants want to live? And how do they want to live together so we can create a cleaner way of giving plants a healthy start and a healthy life. And with that cleaner way, guess what financially happens? Your costs tremendously drop. Your cost per square foot plummet because you're not there all the time weeding and tending and staking and replanting and replacing. So if you look at the cost per square foot, it dramatically declines because you just have less to do as the plants get tighter and bigger. We just weeded the garden for this walk today. The last time we weeded it was 5 weeks ago. And if you walk through and we didn't weed, the weeds blended in so well with the plants, you wouldn't have really known it was weedy. So that's the kind of thing you can look for. You can pace yourself. You don't have to spend so much time weeding in between your plants that are 3 feet apart or 2 feet apart.
As he's changing plants, I don't know if you're aware of this, but Roy was just featured in Garden Design magazine, which is probably the exemplar for any gardening magazine. It doesn't get much better than that. So look up that on their website if you haven't read the article.
Should we take a walk?
Yeah, you want to talk any more about these?
I think we'll point them out in the garden. We'll give you a... Yeah, that's Calamaris. And I have to apologize, I can't tell you the common names because they're regional. Some lady came in last 2 years ago to buy bloody nose. I don't know what to tell you. I had no idea what I don't know what that was. It turned out to be prairie trillium. Okay, that common name I know, but it's Trillium recurvatum. In Champaign, Illinois, where she grew up, they called it bloody nose. So common names are very storybook. They're very nice if you're creating a nice story, a regional story about gardening with grandma or whatever. But when you know the Latin, the genus species, you'll always get the plant you want. We have 5 different moor grasses. So if you come here and say you want more grass, I'd ask you how many more do you want? Or I'd say which one of the 5. And if you don't know the Latin name, I don't know which one to give you. And it's not intimidating. People, I can't speak. You don't have to speak Latin. You don't have to. You just say it quickly, and it sounds like you know what you're talking about. My whole goal in high school was to get C's, and I never get bothered by my parents. There's nothing wrong with being average. That's not a sin in life to be average. And when I get a C in high school, I get through. Nobody yells at me. I get to do kid stuff instead of sitting there worried about organic chemistry and everything. And that's all you got to do. Just like my dad, one thing he always said, which I always hid from, Roy, why don't you use the brains God gave you? That was a Berwyn phrase that you couldn't escape. Use the brains God gave you. And he was right. If you just have common sense about what you're doing, 80% of everything works. You know, it really that's common sense about how a plant lives, how you live with that plant. So, okay.
Where you want to?
Yeah, we'll start up by the beautiful blue convertible.
This is limestone, crushed limestone. Rain is about a 4.8 as it falls out of the sky. If it runs 50 feet across this, it's close to 8. So it happens. Also, it's probably a limestone base, which exacerbates the situation. You're getting it from below and you're getting it from above.
Upright.
Yeah.
And it was naturally occurring with Tennesseeensis and purpurea. So it's more by when you go around the pyramid. And then it blooms later and longer as the Tennesseeensis parentage, so it flowers for quite a while.
Are you talking the white bug?
No, that's echinacea, but there's a Northwind is on the other side of when we go around the pyramid. It's called Echinacea Northwind.
Oh.
And usually nobody buys it because it doesn't look good in a pot. And when you buy a plant, you're judging it in the pot.
Oh.
You're not really understanding how it's going to relate to your garden. So that gives me more to use. So I'm excited that no one buys it in retail. I can spread it and put it in more gardens. So it's a nice plant.
A word to the wise, 3 of them of the echinacea that Roy selected have already left the bench. So I would beat a path back if you want to get more.
Roy, when did you put this garden in?
It started in, Steve built the pyramid in around 2002. And then the garden went in. This used to be our stock beds for Northwind. We grew 450,000 perennials. 400,000 went to Midwest ground covers. We got them into a diverse selection of ground covers through the 90s. And then it was nice. I just load a semi every 2 weeks, wave goodbye, no marketing. And we're helping them with their stage potting. And then we phased out with Midwest because they had people that could do it in 20 years. We phased out in 2010. and then created our own system of using plants. And in 2010 is when I went heavily into sedges. And we sold 4, I think, because nobody had interest in grasses because that's what they pull. So when you look at how people's perception of what something is, change is hard. Because people, if they enjoy what they're doing, why change? So change usually occurs in 2 ways. You'll change if what you're doing isn't healthy for you. You'll find, boy, I need to make a change in my life, or self-discovery. When you discover on your own something that will benefit who you are and what you're going to do, you change right away. So self-discovery is what we try to do. We don't want to tell you this is what you should do. We want to just kind of show you what's happening here. And if you discover a plant or a community that seems to make you feel something, you might try that. You might look at. And also talking about plants within communities. Like people ask me, Roy, what's your favorite plant? I don't know. I don't have a favorite plant. I have a favorite community I could talk to you about, combinations. And those are the ones I put in my book. They're simple recipes for having like making a meatloaf. If you make a meatloaf and it's edible, you might start making other meals because now you got confidence and you move into another meal, and then you invite people over now because you can prepare food in a healthy way. So the book just shows you simple patterns that you can put together so the plants live socially, and then you and the plants figure each other out. But it's about the good start, to give the good start.
Is this devil's bit?
This is Sushinella. Sushinella, I can't remember the species. And it has little white flowers.
Yeah.
But I would not put that in right away. If you put Sushinella in right away, sell your house. It's going to seed everywhere. So when will Sushinella live well? You place it in a community that's 5 years old, because then it has competition. And with competition, an opportunistic plant can't seed around because it has nowhere to go, because your plants are adults. So one way of planting is put in your plants that respect their space and they can tighten up and grow together. Then put in the thugs and bullies 4 to 5 years later. They can't become a thug and a bully because they don't have the opportunity to seed in. And a lot of times we put in plants that seed freely, and it's not their fault. But then they seed everywhere, and then when it's kind of difficult sometimes for people to haul all that out. So when you phase it in, that way you have competition, and because of competition, the aggressive plants, they just have nowhere to go. So it's a staged way of doing it, just like buying a new house. Yeah.
Roy, is there any relationship? You have 3 different trees here. Are the plants, are these particular plants that are, say, under this tree friendly to that tree, or is it random?
It's just random. It's mostly I look at as light energy. What tree lets light energy in and at what space and what angle. Then I can put plants in based on the light energy that each tree, what foot candles of light are appearing here in relationship to under this tree. Yeah. So it's basically foot candles of light. And I shouldn't even say that. That sounds too complex. You just stand here and you watch the sun. It's really, okay, the light's going here. I don't get light under there. That means I got more shade. So foot candles of light sometimes helps me sound like I know what I'm doing. And really I just stand here, okay, it's sunnier here. Okay, there I am. I solved that issue.
Another question, can you identify some of the grasses?
Oh yeah.
Which one is which?
This is Molinia Paul Peterson. Molinia Paul Peterson. This is Deschampsia Gold Tau. Loves wet, loves moist to average, loves wet to moist to average. This Deschampsia Selection Gold Tau. You can see it drifting through here. That's a thalictrum, that little floating pink. That's nice. And you add that again later when you have a support system of plants. That thalictrum, you see how it leans? If I put that in too early, people would say it flops, and somebody would put a bamboo stake there and wrap a nylon sock around it. That's embarrassing for that plant to be tied up with a nylon sock. So you just wait till you have a support system. That's Galenia. So when you use Galenia, the Galenia is vertical, and then the thalictrum can say, can I lean on you? Go ahead. You can lean on me, and then you get a Monet moment. You get the blending of the soft pink with the Galenia, the upright, and the nice red stems. And you see the seed heads on Galenia, they're kind of red too. And if you don't know that right away, that's okay.
Roy, could you tell me? Oh.
Yeah.
Are you moving things around here a lot? Or?
What this is a laboratory.
Okay.
So I take things out, put new things in,
Got you.
and I'm looking to see how plants live together. I'm trying to stretch what their possibilities are, to see what a forgiving nature they might have.
So it's a constant.
Yeah, I'm going to dig out along that border. That's getting messy there. So I'm going to clean out that whole border and then put a whole new group of different things in. Because I've got some new native sedges I want to try, but I want to see how they compete with some of the perennials. So a lot of things here I won't take out into the public because I'm not quite sure if it's going to work, if it works. And then when I see it work, then I go, okay, now I know I can plant that at somebody's house. Because you don't want to give things to people they can't take care of.
Right.
That would be hard to say, hope it all works out for you. And take off.
Here, give me $8.
Yep, good luck. Good luck to you.
Roy, I got
Well, we'll take a quick walk into the woodland gardens. And then we
Be in the shade.
can be in the shade.
Good.
And then I can show you some sedges in action.
That sounds exciting.
Huh?
Sedges in action.
And that's what we'll take a look at. Well, two shade gardens that were planted by, this is by Chris Abrams out of Chicago. And you can see this is he's got nice patterns. He's got the sedges as a resting spot, that's Carex albicans. Then he's got Sinensis, this umbrella plant. And the flowers aren't they're in bloom now. It's the texture of the foliage that's very nice in contrast to the sedges and the ferns. And he drifted the ferns through in various patterns. You can see the repetition of Sinensis. Over here, he's got it over here. There's more, but I think over there. He's got Astrantia, but there's Sinensis over there. So he creates different patterns of repetition. And the way you do that to begin with, you don't do it right away. You do it in the winter on grid paper. You get square foot grid paper, you make your plant list, and then take them and create your patterns sitting at the table while it's snowing. If you don't like it, you erase it, you start over, you keep reassessing it. And then you see the groups of ferns scattered through here, even the Canadian ginger, the serum. Semicifuga as a backdrop, another pattern of it over there. So it's just like painting. All he's doing is painting the patterns in, as long as you know, again, growth rate and growth habit of each plant and what their mature height will be. Yeah, if you don't know the plants, then buckle up. Okay, this is Austin's garden. He designed this probably 3 years ago. Now you can see different elements. The Solomon seal, thalictrum, that's polygonatum thalictrum. So he's got different textural looks than Chris has. So it's really cool. And see the sedges it's albicans also that Chris used. It's the same resting note. In music, you take a visual rest with the sedges. And then what picks up your eye with Austin is the drifts of textures. Now we haven't weeded this garden since May. We need to get in here and you can see the marigolds. Tennessee, you can see them coming in, so someone will come in here and probably weed this next week or the week after, and then we'll be done for the year. We need to get a hold of that before before it gets out of control, but it's not that much. You know, a cedro can be in here for maybe 2 hours, he's done.
But you have to have a landscape maintenance guy that knows that that's not.
Oh yeah, if you hire Jimmy the mowing guy, bless your heart. Yeah, he won't know what to do. And that's the call from the bell tower. We need gardeners. We got enough landscapers. Bless their heart, they're very good at keeping everything neat and tidy. We've got a very neat and tidy culture, and we pay a lot of money for neat and tidy. What we're working on now at Cantini through the College of DuPage, and we're in cooperation with Cantini, we're starting a cultural garden program. We need something. We didn't want to just say gardeners because everybody thinks they're a gardener. I jumped in the air the other day and I left the earth. That doesn't mean I'm an astronaut, okay? But anyway, cultural gardener, and cultural gardeners can actually earn a living. They can get paid $45, $50 an hour, but yet they'll cut the owner's costs by half. Because with the cultural gardener, because they know and understand the plants, if we haven't weeded in here in 7 weeks, and it's not that bad. If we weeded every 2 weeks to 3 weeks, and there'd be less to do, like a cedro might spend 2.5 hours in here. If you came out here every 2 weeks, you might spend 45 minutes. So if you add 45 minutes, 50 minutes an hour times $50, that's not very expensive. And if this was wood chips and plants spaced 3 feet apart, you'd have 3 guys out here hoeing, fluffing up your mulch, you know, and they'd be here an hour and a half, and you'd be paying 3 guys $90 an hour, $80 an hour to fluff mulch.